In this lesson, we're going to be simplifying expressions containing complex numbers. So just a quick review from the last lesson, we know that I times I is I squared, which is then -1. So we're going to be using that quite a bit in this lesson. Whenever we take an I times an I, that means it's I squared, which then means it's -1. And then also, just to kind of review, let's say we had x plus 3 times x minus 3. So whenever we have a set of a polynomial like this, where we have x plus 3, and we take it times its conjugate, which is x minus 3, then we'd have x times x, which would be x squared, x times -3, which would be -3x, and then we'd have 3 times x, and -3 times 3, which would be -9. So then we can see here that we'd have x squared, and the -3x and 3x cancel each other out, so then we just have -9. And that's kind of what's going to happen today, because anytime you take an expression times its conjugate, it basically gets rid of that middle term there. Alright, so that's just the review of that, so we're going to start on some problems here. So let's say we had 5i, well then the conjugate would be -5i. If we had -12i, then the conjugate would be 12i. So it's just the opposite there. One's positive, the other's going to be negative. If it's negative, it's going to be positive. Now if we multiplied them, so if they said what's a conjugate, we just wrote those. So the conjugate of 5i is -5i, the conjugate of -12i is 12i. Now if we multiply those, 5i times -5i, and I'm just going to put like terms together because it's multiplication all the way through there. So then I'd have 5 times 5, whoops, -5, and I times I. So 5 times -5 is -25, and I times I is I squared. So then we have -25, and I squared, remember from the last lesson, the last slide, is -1. So then -25 times -1 is 25. So then that would be our answer. Let's try that again here. So we have -12i times 12i. And once again, I just put like terms together because it's multiplication. If there was addition or subtraction there, I can't just put like terms and like things together. Since it's all multiplication, I can rearrange it anytime I want, in any way I want. So it's -12 times 12, and I times I. So that would be -144. I times I is I squared. -144 times I squared is -1. So that's going to give me 144, and there would be my answer. Alright, now let's try it with some expressions here. So let's say we had 4 minus 2i. Well, the conjugate of that would be then 4 plus 2i. So it's just the opposite there. So now if we multiplied them, we'd have 4 minus 2i times 4 plus 2i. And then we just FOIL it, basically, we had before. So that's going to be 4 times 4, and I'm going to write out a lot more than I need to, just so you can see step by step. And here we'd have plus 4 times 2i. And here we'd have, there's a minus in front of that 2. So it's minus 4 times 2i. And then over here we'd have minus again, because we got a negative, times a positive, so we got the minus and the positive, be 2i times 2i. So we'd have 4 times 4 is 16. These two terms are going to cancel each other out because we've got a positive and a negative, so they cancel each other out. So then at the end we have -2 times 2i, so that'd be 16, and minus 2 times 2 is 4, I times I, so remember I times I equals -1 because it's I squared. So we have, I'll just write I squared there, so we have -16 minus 4, I squared is -1, so we have 16 negative 4 times negative 1 is 4, so then we have 20. That would be our answer then. So on this one here, I've already written it down, so we're going to just try another one. We'll probably try one after this also. So I have 6 times 6, and then I have minus 6 times 3i, because there's a minus in front of the 3, and then I'd have plus 6 times 3i, and then down here I'd have minus 3i times 3i. Alright, so to clean it up a little bit here, we would have then 36, and we can see this and this is going to cancel each other out because they're opposites. We have one minus and one negative. So way down at the very end there we have negative 3. Just put like terms together just so you can see that it's multiplication there. So then I have 36 minus 3 times 3 is 9. I times I is I squared. Once again, I'm writing more than I really need to, just so you can see all the steps. So I have 36 minus 9, and I squared is negative 1. So I have 36, negative 9 times negative 1 is positive 9, which would be 45. So that would be my answer then. Alright, so on this one here, I already started a little bit to save some time. So we have, I just FOILed it, so then from there I'd have 25, and once again those cancel out because they're opposites. And at the very end there I have minus I times I, which would be I squared. So then I have 25 minus, and we know I squared is negative 1. So then we have 25 minus negative 1, which would be 26. Alright, in this one we're going to have something in the numerator and denominator, so it's a different type of looking expression. But we're going to be doing basically the same thing. So we need to get rid of that I in the denominator, kind of like we have to do when we have radicals. We've got to get rid of those in the denominator. So we're going to multiply it by its conjugate, which would be 4i. And whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So then on the top, then I'd have 3 minus 6i times 4i. And on the bottom I have negative 4 times 4i times I. I'm just putting things together. They look alike there. So then if I distribute this here, I'd have 3 times 4i. And then there and minus 6i times 4i. And on the bottom I'd have negative 16i squared. So then from there, the top, I'd have 12i minus, and I can take the 6 and the 4, would be 24. The I times the I, which would be I squared. And I'll do that first just to kind of clean it up. So we'd have 12i minus 24. I squared is negative 1. So we have 12i plus 24. Alright, so that's the numerator, that's on the top. Then on the bottom, we have, and I'll put that down here just to show you, negative 16, and I squared is negative 1, so that's going to be 16. So then we have that in our denominator. Alright, now we've got to see if we can still simplify this even further. So, and I have to be able to do it in both sections, so I'm going to look at here. Whoops. Should have been right there. Sorry about that. Kind of messy. So I have to look there and there. I have to be able to simplify it in both of them, or I can't simplify it any further at all. So if both of them will be able to simplify by the same number, I can simplify it. So let's look at the 12 and the 16. 4 will go into both of those. So 4 will go in those 3 times, and I got to put the I. And on the 24, 4 will go into there 6 times, and then I have 4 on the bottom because that's what I use. So just to recap there, 12 over 16, just like we learned way back when, 12 over 16 simplifies down to this 3 over 4 right here, and 24 over 16 simplifies down to the 6 over 4. So that's what I did there. So since 4 went into all of them. I was able to do that. So then my final answer, just so you can see it, clean it up, 3i plus 6 over 4. Alright, again, I just started out, so I'll go through what I did, just save some time. So I started out with the 6 plus 9i over 3i. I multiplied it by the conjugate on the denominator, which would be negative 3i, because the other one's positive 3i, to the top and bottom. Then I just took the negative 3i and distributed it to both of the terms in there, and then also here, and that's what I'm getting in this second step there. So from the second step, 6 times negative 3i is negative 18i. And then over here we have 9i times negative 3i, which would be negative 27i squared. And on the bottom we'd have negative 3 times 3, because that's multiplication, so that's a negative 3, not a minus there. We've got a multiplication. That's why the parentheses are there. So you have negative 9i squared. Alright, so I'm going to go up here on the top then. So on the top, in the numerator, I have negative 18i minus 27, and I squared is negative 1. So then I have negative 18i minus 27, or excuse me, plus 27, because negative 27 times negative 1 is positive 27. Then on the denominator, I have my negative 9i, so that's going to go in here. So negative 9, and that's negative 1, because it's I squared. So that's going to give me 9. So on the top then, so that gives me, I'll just show you here, that equals 9. So on the top then, I have negative 18i plus 27 all over 9. And now again, I see if I can simplify, and it has to go into both of them, in the 18 and 9, and the 27 and 9. So if the only thing I was able to simplify was 18 over 9, then I wouldn't be able to do it, because it has to be both terms. So if I look here, that's going to simplify down to negative 2. And if I look here, that's going to simplify down to 3. And I can't forget the i's, sorry about that. And so then that would be my answer there. So it's nothing denominator, because the 9 goes into both of those 2 times for the negative 18 and 3 times for the 27. Alright, on this one we have 4 plus I over 3 minus I. So the conjugate would be 3 plus I, because we have 3 minus I in our equation to starting out with. So now I'm going to have to FOIL all those in there. So if I look at this, let's do the top first, and I'll only do the top. So that's going to give me 4 times 3 and 4 times I. Then we're going to have 3 plus I and I plus I, or I times I. Alright, I'm just going to do all that first, clean up the numerator, then I'll work on the denominator. So I have 12, and here we have 4i and 3i, which would be 7i. And then I times I, remember that is I squared, which is negative 1. So we have minus 1. So there, then we have 12 minus 1 is 11, and then we have the 7i. And remember, back in the other lessons, you can't put those together because 11 doesn't have an I. So the I kind of just acts like a variable, so you can't put them together. Alright, so that's the numerator, so now I'm going to work on the denominator. So once again, I'm just going to FOIL that. So that'd be 3 times 3 is 9. Then over here, plus 3i. And then minus 3i, and then negative I times I would be negative I squared. Alright, so then I'd have 9, and these cancel out each other out there, because one's positive or negative. Minus I squared is negative 1, so I have 9 minus negative 1, which is 10. So there's my denominator. So then my final answer, this is the numerator, this is the denominator, so 11 plus 7i over 10. Now I look at that, and am I able to simplify both of those, the 11 over the 10 and the 7 over 10? Remember, they have to both be able to simplify in order to do that. And I'm not able to do that, so then that is going to be my final answer. Alright, my problem here is 2 plus I over 5 minus I, so I multiply by the conjugate, which is 5 plus I, top and bottom. So now I'm just going to FOIL, and I'll start with the numerator first, just to get that done with, and then I'll work on the denominator. So 2 times 5I, and that times that would be plus 2I, and then I take the middle terms, so 5I, and I times I is I squared. And it's plus because they're both positive there. So to clean that up, I'd have 10, and right here, that plus that would be 7I, not 7I squared, it's just 7I, just like you had 2n plus 5n, which would be 7n, so it's just 7I plus, and I squared is negative 1, so anytime, once again, see I squared, it's negative 1. So I'm going to put like terms together, that and that, so that'd give me 9. And then this one's going to be by itself there, plus 7I. Alright, so that's just the numerator. So I've not even touched the denominator yet. So I'll do that over here. So the denominator, so I have 5 times 5, which is 25. 5 times I, which would be 5I. And 5 times negative I, which would be minus 5I. And then negative I plus, or times I would be negative I squared. Alright, clean it up a little bit. So I have 25. Those cancel out because one's positive, one's negative. 5I minus 5I is 0. And minus I squared is negative 1. So 25 minus negative 1 is 26. Alright, so now I got the denominator done. So this is my numerator. This is my denominator. Both of them are done, so I'm now going to put them back together. 9 plus 7I over 26. And I look at each term in there. So I look over the 9 over the 26. I can't simplify that down. Since I can't do that, I can't simplify the 7 over 26 down either, which I know I can't, but even if I could, I would not be able to because of the 9 and the 26. So then that is going to be my answer. Alright, and that's the end of the lesson there. So once again, as I always say, if you get stuck on your homework or don't understand something in this or your homework, go back over it, watch the video again. Don't just watch it once and think you're done and you can remember it. You might have to go over your notes and this. So whatever it takes to get you to get the right answer and understand it, that's what you want to do. And best of luck, so good luck, and talk to you later.